Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Cassidy Diamond, and I am the Public Programs and Events Manager here at the International Documentary Association. Very good to have you all joining us again. Before we get started, I am going to begin, as we always do, with a land acknowledgement. Today, I am coming to you from Chicago, Illinois, on the unceded land of the three Fire Peoples, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, IndieWire, for helping to bring this series to you this year, along with support from KCRW. We have screenings coming up all the way through the end of January, so we're a little more than halfway through our screening series. You can find more films and more Q&As on our website, which is documentary.org/screening series. And we're all here for a great conversation about The Mole Agent, moderated by IndieWire's Eric Kohn. So I'm going to waste no time in bringing Eric on, and we can get this conversation started.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be doing this one. There's a lot of great documentaries in this series, but this one I really love quite a bit, and I'm very excited to talk to the filmmakers about it. I saw it at the Sundance Film Festival at the start of the year, which feels like a generation ago, but it stuck with me all this time, in part because it's such a welcome surprise to see a film that transcends the limits of being a documentary and really feels like something more, just a great story. And obviously, coming out of a story like that, one has lots of questions about, as a documentary, how something like this came together. So hopefully we can dig into that a little bit and explore what this film was seeking to do and how it kind of all came together to be this beautiful story of aging and companionship and many other kinds of things. So here with me today, we have director Maite Alberdi, we have producer Marcela Santibanez, and we have the executive producers Julie Goldman, Christopher Clements, and Caroline Hepburn. So thank you all for being here. It's there's so much to discuss with this film, but I think probably the best place to start is the most obvious one. Maite, can you tell us a bit about how you found Sergio and how this story came to you?
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, this story started probably from a different place, that I wanted to make a film noir documentary about a private detective. So I started researching in all the private detective agencies in Chile. And I met Romulo, that is a private detective that's appeared in the film and was the only one that allows me to research inside his company. And I worked with him as his assistant for a couple of months. And I saw different cases of moles. And at the beginning, I was thinking make a TV series of different moles case, but it was super difficult for us to plan how to shoot it without be discovered and how to shoot it without, to don't, ¿cómo digo interrumpir el trabajo de Rómulo Merced?
To not interrupt Romulo's work, to not interfere with
in his research. So we see different cases, and the retirement homes one that was something that he usually worked with was the one that we really loved because it was connected with our previous films, and it was a place that we can go by our own and say we want to make a film about old age, and was connected with our filmography. So we choose that case, and when a new client arrived, was the case that we wanted to shoot. And 2 months before shooting, the usual old man that he worked with him as a mole broke his hip, so he needs to hire a new one. And that was how Romulo put the ad in the newspaper, and Sergio arrived and was completely a gift, because we saw him and we were completely in love with him, and we knew that probably we were not going to be the best spy in the world as the previous one that worked with him, but we had to beg Romulo to hire Sergio, and he was the one that turned the film in another place, because he was not commit with the job at the beginning, yes, but he was committed with the character and with the reality of that place. So he turned our point of view and the starting point to another film, I think.
Well, Marcela, maybe you can tell us a bit from a producing perspective about the practical challenges of getting inside this home. We see in the film to some degree that the cameras weren't hidden. So what were the challenges involved in making sure you could shoot as much as you needed to do to tell this story as it unfolded?
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is a challenging film. I think from the idea, we immediately knew this was going to be challenging because, of course, how do you shoot a spy without wanting him to get discovered? Just the sole idea of like shooting him, we could expose him. So that was, of course, the first challenge that we had. And the way to address that in terms of the retirement home is that we arrived there previously. And because Maite had a track record on making films that were related with old age, they really opened the doors to us and they were very receptive. And we told them that we wanted to make a film about old age and about them and about that specific place. And if anybody new came, we would like to put special focus on any like new arrival to the retirement home. So what happened is that we started shooting like 2 weeks before Sergio actually arrived. And so people got used to the cameras. And then while we were already shooting, Sergio did arrive to the retirement home. And that was how like smoothly he became the protagonist without nobody ever like suspecting about it.
I want to hear from the executive producers here as well, because I think it'll be helpful to hear sort of the bigger picture of how a project like this came together. You know, maybe I'll start with Julie. You've been involved with such a wide range of documentaries. What was it that stood out to you about the potential of this one when it first came to your attention?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we met with Maite and Marcela and at many years ago at Tribeca All Access, and we loved Maite's previous films. And so we were really excited to meet with them and hear about it. And as they were describing this concept, we were completely like, oh my God, we've never seen anything like this. We love this idea. To do it with Maite, it just seemed like it would be incredible. And then we got to know Marcela through the process as well, and work very closely together. But it was really, I mean, for us, it's like, what haven't we done? What is something that feels really new and fresh? Because the idea of doing the same basic kind of documentary even is not, that's what's so great about what we do, is that we can enter all of these different worlds and have these experiences and then move to the next. So this one absolutely captured us from the beginning.
Caroline, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, the film noir aspect of it really kind of drew us in. This was, like Julie said, something we've never really seen before. And just being kind of a cinephile and loving film noir as a genre, the idea of, transforming that into the documentary space was just kind of so much fun and exciting to think about how this could be done. And, but it was the whole process working with Maite and Marcela was really wonderful. And, it was really at a certain point in the edit is when we shifted in the intent of the film of being strictly a spy movie and moving it to really focusing on the home and the people who are in there. And just the way, we kind of let go that idea of it being solely a spy movie and really embrace the beauty and the empathy of Sergio and kind of the connections everyone was making. And it just made the film, it just felt organic to kind of come to that. And it just made the film even more special in our eyes because it was multi-layered and, it wasn't solely, we didn't get the style or the tone to kind of get in the way of telling a more beautiful and complex story. So it was really, the whole process was just kind of invigorating and fun. And, Maite and Marcela were just great partners in making this film.
Christopher, same for you? Oh, you're muted. It's normal problems.
What I loved about it was that what would be necessary in order to capture it right, that it was almost like wildlife photography, because you've got the realm where these people live, and the crews needed to be patient. I found it fascinating. There 3-4 hours you'd have a camera set up, and you know that this group congregates here at a certain time, and you don't know what they're going to talk about. You figure it's going to be follow-on material from things that they'd been discussing before, but you take what you can get. And that's what I loved about it. It was like ladling out like a real world by just standing back and letting it unfold in front of us. So yeah, the ratio, as Maite can point out, was enormous compared to the running time, but it was of necessity in order to get these kind of authentic moments.
So Maite, can you tell us a bit about how much Sergio understood about what you were doing as a filmmaker? Because in the film, one of the things that's very entertaining is that, you know, he's not a very good investigator, and he has trouble with the technology and so forth. So putting on top of that, whatever it is you were looking to capture as a filmmaker, I'm curious about how you were able to communicate with him over the course of the shoot.
I think until now, Sergio didn't really understand we were doing. Like, he was super connected with Romulo, and it's the first time for us that we don't have a character in a film that the commitment is with us. His commitment was with Romulo and with himself in some point. So if in some point in the third day that he arrives, he wanted to quit, because he stayed in an interview here in a newspaper on Sunday, that for him was like, he arrived at that place and the owner of the place told to him that he's going to become one old man of that group, and he doesn't want it to be like the people that were living there, so he wanted to go. But with Marcela, we cannot combine him to say like, we are making a film. It was completely what he was living, and he entered to this job for an ad in the newspaper, not for make a film. So, and in some point for me was we were super concerned that I cannot give him instructions in the detective office, because if I give him some instruction, when he will be at the retirement home, he will be waiting for my instructions. So, and if that happened, he's going to be discovered. So we shoot first the office, and I was like a fly in the wall, like trying to be super quiet. And of course that I can communicate with Romulo. And if something was not working well, I asked Romulo, like, can you explain that again? But it was with Romulo. And I knew before what Romulo was going to ask him, but my communication was directly with Romulo and not with him. And we tried to be super clear in all the process with him on that. And he has freedom at that point. And it was all the time like walking in X, like it's going to it was a risky shooting all the time, because he can quit, he can be discovered. Like he was like speaking with the phone open, and we were like, "Ay!" and I wanted really to say to him, you cannot do that, like you're going to be discovered, but I cannot. So it was like all the time super risky until the end. But he was living his experience and his life, and I had to be subordinate for that or not that. Yeah.
Well, Marcela, you saw this project slowly come together. What did you make of the way that the story started to evolve in the edit, you know, knowing everything that had happened up until that point?
Yeah, I think that for us, like, at the beginning, when we talked about the project and when we started working on it, it was always the case was always the story arc. That was like, we knew he had to discover, he would discover something or not, but it was always easy to think that as the story case, as the story arc, I mean. But then what happened during the shoot, and that then I think we understood much better during the editing process, is that we didn't have any character. We had Sergio, who is an amazing person. So the story, like while we were shooting, you could tell how the case started, like, I don't know, having less importance, and how his own experience started gaining and gaining like importance in throughout the shooting. And then while we were, while Maite and Carolina were editing, and in that sense, I might say we have an incredible editor, which had a patience and did an amazing job. And one of the main things was discovering that the story at the beginning, we thought it was about a case, and then we actually had this like serendipity, and we had an amazing character, and the story was about him. And the editing process was about discovering his own arc and taking away the things that didn't matter and finding that true gem. And I think that changed the whole process. Like the film had like, it was good already, and then it just evolved to another level, because it wasn't just a fun story. It was fun, but also deep, and it talked about many more issues than we thought maybe at the beginning. It embraced a lot, and now with the whole pandemic, it's like it evolved another level. Like all the topics that we had there, now after the pandemic, you just see it with another eyes. So I feel like the film has evolved. I don't know if you read what the project was 4 years ago and you see what it is right now, you really feel like it's the best like way that it could have become. You know, it became the best version. I feel like I feel really proud of what it became.
And we have to quit as a crew. That for me was super difficult, to characters indeed that were important, like the client for me was a super important character, and we shoot her a lot in different scenes, and was like the one that made the plots of the original story. But as was a film about Sergio, and Sergio was not really committed with the client has not sense in the editing, and we start living that kind of things.
Yeah.
Maite, I'm curious, what were there any scenes that we don't see in the film? Because people who are listening to this conversation, they know the movie. Were there scenes that you felt passionate about, but you had to let go just because they didn't work with the direction the film was going in?
I think that in all editing, you always have to kill your darlings, and it's part of it. And for me, documentaries in general, it's more about the decision of what do you leave, that what do you keep. It's like super difficult to leave things to construct the figure. But I think the client, for me, the client scenes was like a big, like when we decide that, it was easy to leave another kind of scenes that were about the research and the cases and important things that he discovered of that client, of that family, that was like the detective intrigue, and more about film noir narrative. That was my original idea. That was super difficult for me to quit to the film that I imagined, and to commit with the film that Sergio gave to us. Like he was the one that he made this gift for us, and we have to take it, and to quit all that narrative that maybe has more plots, and it was more like, what do you want of a narrative, and to know everything and all the information. But well, it's about like private detective in general. Like Romulo says to me all the time that he has more work now because of the boom of the social networks. The people have a lot of information and want to know a lot about the others. So that's why people is hiring him. It's the same here. It's like, we don't need to know everything about the case. Like the case, it's something that it's there. The important thing, it's what the people is living there. And that is the point that Sergio gave to me and to us. Yeah.
For the other producers here, I would love to hear a bit more about how this film stands out from other projects you've worked on, because there is a sense that this film couldn't take another form. You can't imagine it with a bunch of talking heads or somehow, trying to depict what we see here from a more sort of conventional angle. So what is it about the form of this film that you think gives it distinction in the documentary market? We'll start with Julie again.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. One is that it's Sergio, first of all, is what kind of carries this film, because he's such a incredible, empathetic, kind person, and he's so easy to connect with. And I think that is one thing, is to have somebody who's your guide, who you are absolutely hooked into from early on. I think that was like a very key thing that makes this film really stand out. And I think there's like this balance of humor and real pathos. There's moments where it absolutely breaks your heart, and then you have these incredible scenes with, like, this just keeps going. Like when he's there having the party, and he's named like King of the Ball. It's like the prom king, and it kind of goes here, and then it goes to the next thing, and then suddenly they're outside, and it's just, there are these things that build that just feel like nothing else that we have ever worked on. And I think it's also Maite's tenderness that comes through as well. I mean, she has an incredible heart, and you just feel it. You feel from both of them, and there's something about that feels very different. I mean, we use the word tender a lot with this film, and I don't think we use that word for a lot of films that we've worked on.
Caroline, Christopher?
Well, I think it really also just captured a moment in time, for both Sergio, Maite. I've heard her speak about how if it was any other point in Sergio's life, it might not have unfolded the way it did. But because he was just lost his wife and he was looking for this purpose, in his life, that you just have this, he was kind of more open in some ways for these types of connections with all the people in the nursing home. But it was also, Maite kind of being ready to do this type of film and going out and actively seeking this type of story and, adapting where it needed. And so it just feels very kind of serendipitous in some ways, that it all kind of, everything aligned to make it the story that it became, especially even with Romolo having the other detective who wound up breaking his hip and didn't work out with him. And then Romolo wanted to hire someone else over Sergio, but there was issues because he was married and had a family, and it didn't really work out with him going into a retirement home because he had too many things, that might make him exposed. So just all of it's kind of, like that Hitchcock quote of like, God made the story. Everything just kind of lined up beautifully, and, the stars aligned to tell it in the way which we were able to tell it.
What I actually liked about it was something that we do at Model all the time, which is always saying, have you found a new way in? Have you found a new way into this story? Because it's been said many times, there's just so many stories in human experience. And the trick in finding something novel is finding a new way in. And what I loved about this was the intentionality of there was an objective here. If you look at old age, it's almost always a static depiction. It's people sitting still, people slowing down, and the whole movie takes that feel. With this, there was such an objective that it allowed it to be vital. Every time we saw him moving through those halls, he wasn't wallowing in that space. He was on a mission, and that mission was just enough to make us sensitive to be able to look at those things, those quotidian things that go on in people's lives that really are reveals of who they are, what their life has been, and what their present state is.
Well, Maite, Caroline mentioned Hitchcock earlier, and I'm wondering what sort of films or filmmakers you were discussing in terms of the precedents for a film like this, because it is playing off of film noir traditions.
Yeah, it was a lot of, or my big reference in style was Laura from Otto Preminger.
Mhm.
And I never say the name okay in English, Orson Welles' La Dama de Shanghai.
The woman from the lady from Shanghai.
Lady from Shanghai.
So those were the two sort of references. And did you explain any of that to Romulo when you got him involved?
No, we never explained it to him, but with the cinematographer, we work a lot in the referencing style, and we see how we can put that reference in his office. And the most difficult thing was how to put the reference in the retirement home, like how to make a bridge between the style that was not from our retirement home and to keep some things in that place of our reference.
So can you tell us, yeah, go ahead, Christopher.
It should also be said that the paraphernalia in Romulo's office, that's what was there. He actually had Scarface on the wall. So it was like, that was his set. We moved things around to, for the frame, but those are his focus points.
We have a big discussion with the Al Pacino poster because it was not of my reference and was completely out of the reference, and he's a gangster. It's not a film noir reference, but was in his office and was important for him, and was something that I can never write because it was it's completely out of the style, but was the kind of contrast and absurd things that were happening there, and we keep it. So the things are his things that we move in some places like to make it visible, but it was part of his world.
What can you tell us about the music?
The music was something really important for us because was the element of the cinematographic language that we can keep the reference of the film noir during all the film, because in the office it was clear the reference and we can work with more control in the lights and in the camera, but I didn't have that control inside the retirement home. I can do it only like super control when he was sending his report, because he was alone during night, so it was easily. But the point that we needed to keep all the time the style was the music, and in the music the musician work with that reference and he create with freedom, but in that style.
And then let's talk a bit about how things have changed since you finished shooting the film. Can you tell us, I mean, did Romulo get a chance to see the film? Did Sergio get a chance to see the film?
Well, the most important thing for us, as Marcela said, was the moment that when the owners of the retirement homes saw the film, because was our most challenging situation, because we didn't say to them that was a mall inside, and they really love it, and Sergio and Romulo too, and they promoted all the time. And as we say for Sergio was experienced, and he's really a close friend of that friends, and was like, it's super important for him to have a archive of that moment in his life. And they really love it, and they are really commitment with the film. And I think that in this context, also for the people of the retirement home, it's an important portrait of what were happening in that place before pandemic. And how the people were abandoned and were with loneliness before the pandemic. That, of course, that when pandemics arrive, nobody can see their grandparents or parents because you were forbidden to go out. But they were already alone before that, and nobody was changing in that place. And because of pandemic, a lot of people start to call their parents and grandparents. And the film, it's also helping on that in some way.
So how is everyone doing now? Have you spoken to Sergio since the pandemic started?
Yeah, he's super bored because in Chile, the lockdown were like 6 months. It's not like in the States, like we start in March 15 until beginning of September. So, and for him, he has a super active life, and was difficult for him to be on his house. He was living with his daughter, and they had a good relationship, but he really wanted to go out all the time. So yes, as for all people, it's a difficult period, but for the active one, or for Sergio, was terrible. Yeah.
And Romulo, is there work for a private eye in this environment?
What?
Is there work for a private investigator in this environment?
Yeah, he continued working because he make a lot of different cases that you cannot imagine. But yeah, he's still having different jobs. Yeah.
He's always fine. Romulo's
He's
always fine.
always fine.
Yeah. Whenever we see him, something really horrible could happen. He always has a big smile. So he's
Yeah.
always fine.
What was his reaction to seeing this film? Does it help him with business? Does he think it's the way he should come across?
I don't.
Yeah,
I think that. But we don't. He wanted to promote his company with the film, but I think that we really don't know yet how it's going to really be perceived, because I feel like if I want to hire a detective, I am not going to go to the one that have a camera inside. Like, I really don't understand how it's going to work for him. He loved it, but yeah, we don't know.
He was telling us that he was renewing his webpage, and he wanted to use like the poster of the film to promote the webpage, and we were like, but people will know that you're not very good detective because you're so exposed. And he's like, you have an idea, maybe I'm gonna think about it one more second. We're like, yeah, think about it.
But our Chilean premiere, it's this Thursday, this week, so we didn't show it yet
I'm curious, Maite, can you talk a bit about the universal element of this film? I mean, people all over the world know that living in a home like this is often the scariest thing that can happen to someone towards the end of their life. Is there anything unique to Chile about the way that these homes are designed or developed for people versus other parts of the world?
I think that in each part of the world works different, but I think that the unique thing of this story, it's the private detective case and the absurd things that these companies have. And I think that how the people live in the retirement home, it's really universal. And for me, what I think that it is universal, it's that you don't see one way of being an old person. Like, you have like a woman that fall in love with Romulo, a one that has Alzheimer, the other one that it's okay, but she's missing her family. So there is a different types of old person, so you cannot make one speech about elderly in that place. And I think that the problem of retirement home in general, we are always with a prejudge that are bad place. As I had a prejudge when I started the research and when I started the film, and it was super difficult for me to realize that I was shooting a place that was good when I thought that was not good. And that was super painful for us with our relation with the owner. Also, like, we lied to these people because we thought that was a bad place. And when we realized that was a good place, the problem is that, and in other retirement homes in the world, I think that in some way we saw them as one step before death or before the people pass away. And it's a way to put the old people out of society. And we need them. So how can we make bridge between a retirement home and society? And how can the old people be part of our day-by-day life, even if they are living in retirement homes? And how can they visit their families? Sometimes they can, like, to really know that they are living there, and it helps for everybody that place exists, but not to be isolated from society. That I think that it's universal. Yeah.
May I add something, Eric?
Please.
Also, I think there's a way that we usually say like retirement homes, and we talk about an entity, but we forget that those retirement homes are composed by human beings. It's like, I don't know, 15 nurses and this director that are really people that are giving the best they can to help other people. So it's easy to depict like a big institution and say this don't work, but then I think that here we had a chance of realizing that it's not a big institution. It's like 5 people, cleaning diapers, changing diapers, I don't know, being sweet, listening to poetry. So it's also interesting to find that, or to see that this is, at the end of the day, it's people just like you, just like me. It's just them taking care of a problem that we as society don't want to take care. So
And the easy thing is to blame institutions at the end. It's like,
yeah,
like, of course, that if I have a small kid in a school, I'm going to blame the school of the things that are happening there. And even as a mom, I can, like, my kid can break his leg, for example, and it's not that I'm not taking care of him. It's like things that happen and things that happen in that places, but we put all the responsibility in the institution, and we ask to them to do everything, and they try to bring love to them, but they're not their families. So you cannot ask to all the things to the retirement home people that work there. Yeah.
Maite, I'm curious about your perspective on this approach to filmmaking overall, because all of your films are very much these kind of personal, character-based sort of studies. Can you talk a bit about why this approach is so appealing to you? And with this particular film, how did you develop as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I think that my interest, it's like to represent society from a small world or from day-by-day situations that can clearly commit you with society problems, that if you can read as a number or in the news, you're not going to move or change your mind. Like, I can tell you, like, old people, it's feeling loneliness. And in Chile, for example, the most highest rates of, ¿cómo digo, suicidio?
Suicide rates
are of 80 years old people, more than young people. So if you read that number, you say like, oh, it's terrible, but you are not understanding really what is happening for these people. So for me, it's like the politics of the experience. Like, you can understand what is happening only committed with characters and with experience, and you can mobilize societies from that. For me, it's super weird what is happening now in Chile after the burnout that we have, the political burnout that we have in October, because this is my 4th film, and it's the first time in all my Chilean interviews with the previous films that the journalists are asking about, how do you think that we have to think in old people in the new constitution? And I made a Down syndrome film that was more political, if I have to say something. And that kind of questions were not in the agenda of the journalists. And now I think that Chile or societies are more looking itself, and and cinema is something that helps for them. And I think that my role as a filmmaker is to understand society from the experience.
It's your first film of the new constitution. Helps people understand it on some level. Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about the future of this story, because when I watched it, at first I thought I was watching a scripted film. It just feels like a narrative film. And we've seen this trend in the last few years where sometimes foreign language films or non-English language films are adapted to English language. would you ever see a film like this being adapted into a more traditional narrative format? And if so, you know, how would you like that to happen?
Yeah, it's a film that we always dreamed with the adaptation for the foreign or in other formats. I think that the story can be represented in different ways. I am happy with my version of the film, but I think it's a film that can have different versions. But maybe Julie can continue with this answer.
Yeah, it was a lot of response and a lot of interest, and so we're currently sorting that out. Actually, I think there's a chance that someone will take it as kind of like the underlying story to remake into an English language narrative film. You'll be the first to know, Eric.
Yeah, very exciting. So I won't ask you to tell us who you think should play Sergio, but that's a nice sort of note of ambiguity to end on, I suppose.
Since Sean Connery passed away, I don't know.
You were ready with that one. Well, thank you all for being here. It's a beautiful movie. Best of luck with the future, with the new constitution, and whatever happens with this film next.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Lots of fun.